The tournament was about to begin. A large, sprawling hall filled with alien soldiers and humans, all gathered for the biggest event in the galaxy, the intergalactic war simulation. This wasn't just any game. It was a competition that determined the best tactical mind in the universe. The stakes were high, and the prize even higher. The best warriors from every race, every planet, would face off in a battle of wits and strategy. The audience was buzzing with excitement, waiting for the battle to begin. No one was more anticipated than Admiral Xar, a fierce and feared alien commander. He had dominated every simulation, defeating the most skilled tacticians and leaving a trail of broken dreams behind him. The mere mention of his name struck fear into the hearts of many. But today, there was a new player on the field. The humans had sent their representative. Alex, a 15-year-old boy with no military experience, just a love for strategy games. He had grown up on Earth, playing simulations in his room, learning from videos and books, never imagining his skills would be tested on such a grand stage. But when the human fleet faced off against the aliens in a tense standoff, Alex was selected to represent Earth. The humans wanted to prove that they were not to be underestimated, and they saw this tournament as their chance to show they were more than just primitive, helpless beings. The moment Alex was chosen, the aliens laughed. How could a boy who had never even seen a real battle possibly stand up to the might of Admiral Xar? Alex was nervous, but he had a quiet confidence. He knew he had prepared for this moment his entire life. His hand shook slightly as he sat down at the table, the massive simulation screen flickering to life in front of him. Across from him, Admiral Xar sat with a cold, calculating expression, his 4 eyes narrowing as he studied his opponent. Alex could feel the weight of the eyes upon him, alien eyes, all around the room, all focused on him. The pressure was immense. He could already hear the whispers, feel the judgment of the crowd. But he pushed those thoughts aside. This was just a game. He had to focus. He would outsmart them. The game began with a thunderous chime, signaling the start of the battle. The simulation screen exploded with life, showing a vast space battlefield filled with fleets of ships, planets, and asteroid fields. It was as real as it could get without actually being real. Alex quickly scanned the screen, calculating the best move. He had always been good at thinking several steps ahead, anticipating his opponent's moves. But this was different. This wasn't just any game. This was the game. The crowd fell silent, watching every move, waiting to see if this young human could stand up to the ruthless Admiral Xar. Xar wasted no time, launching an aggressive attack on Alex's fleet. He moved his ships quickly, using their advanced weapons to bombard Alex's forces. The alien admiral was known for his fast, decisive actions, overwhelming opponents before they could react. Alex's fleet was smaller, but he wasn't worried. He had a plan. He moved his ships in unexpected directions, avoiding Xar's attacks and luring the enemy into a trap. The crowd murmured in surprise. It was a bold move. Xar's ships followed, eager to crush the humans' defenses. But Alex was ready. He activated a hidden strategy, launching a counterattack that caught Xar off guard. The alien fleet, which had seemed invincible just moments before, began to fall back. Xar narrowed his eyes, watching Alex's every move. He wasn't used to being outmaneuvered. His reputation as the best tactician in the galaxy was built on his ability to crush his enemies with brute force and overwhelming strategy. But Alex wasn't following the traditional rules of warfare. He wasn't fighting with strength. He was fighting with intelligence, using his opponent's arrogance and overconfidence against him. The alien admiral's moves became more frantic as he tried to regain control. But with every decision he made, Alex had already anticipated it, countering him at every turn. The alien audience watched, stunned. How was this human boy doing it? They had expected him to crumble under the pressure, to make a mistake, to fall into one of the countless traps that Xar was known for setting. But Alex was calm, cool, and collected, his every move calculated. For every attack Tsar launched, Alex had a defense in place. For every trick the Admiral tried to pull, Alex was ready with an answer. It was clear that the human boy was no ordinary player. Tsar's frustration grew. He could feel the heat of defeat creeping in, and it angered him. He was the Admiral, the best there was, and this boy, this human, was making him look foolish. He had to stop him. Tsar began to change his strategy, moving faster, acting more unpredictably. But Alex was unfazed. He knew that Tsar was trying to throw him off balance, to get him to make a rash move. But Alex wasn't going to fall for it. He kept his focus, his mind always one step ahead. The game was becoming more than just a battle for victory. It was a battle of wits, and Alex was winning. The alien audience was no longer laughing. They were watching in silence, leaning forward, waiting to see what would happen next. The odds were stacked against Alex, but he was making them believe. He was making them realize that humans were not to be underestimated. The first few rounds of the game were over, and Alex had done the impossible. He had held his ground, but he knew it wasn't enough. Tsar would never give up. He had to finish this, and he had to do it fast. The final move was coming, and Alex's heart was pounding. He could hear the whispers from the crowd, the murmurs of doubt turning into nervous excitement. Could Alex really pull off the win? Could a human really outsmart an alien admiral? The tension was unbearable. As the battle raged on, the stakes grew higher. The first 5 minutes were over, and Alex had done something no one expected. He had caught Tsar off guard, and the Admiral was beginning to realize that he might have underestimated his opponent. But the game was far from over. Tsar was still a formidable foe, and the battle for the top spot in the galaxy had only just begun. But Alex, despite the pressure, remained calm. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for humanity's place in the galaxy. And as the audience watched, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a game anymore. It was a fight for the future of mankind. The tension in the arena was palpable as the game between Alex and Admiral Tsar continued. The alien audience had slowly stopped whispering to each other. The once cocky smugness of the alien onlookers had been replaced by an unsettling silence. For the first time, they weren't sure what was going to happen. Every move Alex made was calculated, precise, and unpredictable, and that worried them. How could a human, so young and inexperienced, be outsmarting their greatest tactician? It was as if Alex had seen through Tsar's mind, reading his every move before he even made it. And the strangest part was that Alex was making it look easy. His cool composure and unshakable focus only served to frustrate Tsar even more. Alex could feel the change in the atmosphere. It wasn't just the weight of the alien's eyes on him. It was the pressure of his opponent's growing anger. The Admiral was not used to being challenged, let alone outsmarted by a mere human. But Alex had no time to dwell on that. He had learned long ago that in a game like this, the key to victory wasn't always about power or strength. It was about thinking differently, predicting the unthinkable, and exploiting the mistakes of those who thought they were invincible. Alex didn't have the same brute force as Tsar, but he had something far more dangerous, an understanding of strategy that was unpredictable, and a sharp mind that was willing to take risks. Tsar's frustration reached a boiling point, and he decided to shift his strategy. He moved his fleet with an aggressive speed, trying to overwhelm Alex with sheer force. His ships closed in quickly, surrounding Alex's fleet, cutting off any escape. The Admiral's plan was to box Alex in, force him into a corner, and destroy him with a final, crushing blow. But Alex wasn't worried. He had seen this tactic before. It was a common one among overconfident commanders, a strategy designed to intimidate and overwhelm. Without a second thought, Alex made his move. He activated a hidden feature of his fleet's maneuvering system, a little-known feature that allowed his ships to make sudden, sharp turns. As the alien ships closed in, Alex ordered his fleet to break formation, scattering in all directions. The move was so sudden and unexpected that Czar's fleet couldn't react fast enough. The alien ships, once so sure of their victory, found themselves scattered, unable to catch up with the elusive human fleet. For a moment, Czar hesitated. His ships were losing position, and Alex's fleet was slipping away from his grasp. It was a brief, but crucial moment of hesitation. That was all Alex needed. With a swift, calculated move, Alex launched a counteroffensive. His ships had turned the tables, flanking Czar's fleet from the sides and forcing the aliens into a defensive position. Czar's calm demeanor started to crack. His ships, once so powerful, were now struggling to keep up with Alex's unpredictable tactics. The alien Admiral tried to adjust, moving his ships in tighter formations, trying to regain control of the situation. But every time he tried, Alex was already one step ahead, exploiting a weakness, forcing the aliens into a trap of their own making. The alien audience was in shock. They had never seen anything like this before. Alex, the human boy they had dismissed as unworthy of their attention, was holding his own against the best tactician in the galaxy. The more they watched, the more they realized that Alex wasn't just playing the game. He was rewriting the rules. Every move Alex made was another blow to Czar's pride. Every counterattack, every defensive strategy, was a reminder that perhaps the humans were more than just primitive beings. Perhaps they were something more. And Czar, for the first time in his long career, was starting to doubt his own superiority. Czar knew he had to regain control. He had to stop Alex before the human boy completely outwitted him. The Admiral's eyes narrowed as he began to formulate his next move. He decided to use his most dangerous weapon, an unpredictable assault that had worked against countless enemies in the past. It was a risky move, but Czar was known for his willingness to take bold risks when his back was against the wall. He activated a special feature of his fleet's weapons, an electromagnetic pulse that could disable the targeting systems of his enemy ships. With this, he planned to disable Alex's fleet, leaving him helpless and open to a final, crushing blow. But Alex was ready. He had anticipated Czar's move the moment the Admiral began to shift his tactics. As soon as the pulse was fired, Alex activated a hidden countermeasure in his fleet's systems, one that would protect his ships from the pulse. The alien ships, which had been so confident just moments ago, now found themselves unable to strike. Alex's fleet remained untouched, maneuvering freely, as if nothing had changed. The crowd gasped. It was as if Alex had seen into the future, predicting Czar's every move before it even happened. Czar's anger grew. He had pulled out all the stops, used his most powerful weapons, and still, Alex had found a way to counter him. The alien Admiral, once so sure of his victory, was now struggling to maintain control of the battlefield. The arrogance that had fueled his every move was beginning to falter. Alex wasn't just playing a game. He was challenging the very idea that the aliens were invincible. The audience, once filled with doubt about Alex's abilities, now began to see the young human in a new light. Alex wasn't just surviving the battle. He was winning. The tension in the arena was unbearable. The two forces were locked in a fierce battle, but it was clear that the balance was shifting in Alex's favor. The more Czar tried to regain control, the more Alex outwitted him. The human boy was taking risks, yes, but they were calculated risks, ones that paid off in unexpected ways. It was becoming clear that Alex had something Czar didn't. A mind that could think outside the box, a mind that wasn't bound by the conventional rules of battle. And as the seconds ticked by, the audience began to realize something that Czar hadn't yet fully accepted. Alex might actually win. It wasn't just about the game anymore. It was about something much bigger. The fate of the human race, the way they were viewed in the galaxy, hung in the balance. Would Alex's victory be enough to prove that humanity was a force to be reckoned with? Or would Czar, in a final act of rage, pull off a miracle and defeat the human boy? The answer was still unknown, but one thing was certain. The game was far from over. and the battle for dominance in the galaxy was only just beginning. The atmosphere in the arena had become tense, as if the very air was thick with anticipation. The alien audience, who had initially dismissed the young human boy as a mere challenger, was now watching in stunned silence. Admiral Xar, once so confident and sure of himself, was visibly rattled. His fleet, which had been dominating the battlefield just moments ago, was now struggling under the strategic genius of Alex. Every move Xar made seemed to be countered, outwitted, and turned against him. For the first time in the history of this tournament, it seemed as though the impossible was becoming reality. Could a human truly defeat the greatest tactician in the galaxy? Xar, never one to back down, knew he had to act fast. The pressure of the situation weighed heavily on him. His reputation, his pride, and the very fate of his fleet rested on his ability to reclaim control. He had underestimated Alex at the beginning, but that mistake had cost him dearly. Now, there was no room for error. His eyes narrowed as he focused on the screen, scanning for any possible advantage he could exploit. His mind raced with calculations, looking for a way to turn the tables, but Alex seemed to be always one step ahead. In his desperation, Xar decided to abandon his usual aggressive tactics. He had relied on speed, firepower, and brute strength for so long that he had forgotten one of the most important elements of warfare: patience. He knew that Alex, though clever, was still a human with limitations. Humans could be predictable, could make mistakes. Xar's plan was simple: wait for Alex to slip up. The Admiral slowed his fleet's movements, spreading them out in a wide formation. This was a tactic designed to lure Alex into a trap. He hoped the young human would make a mistake, overextend his forces, and fall into the open jaws of the alien fleet. But Alex wasn't about to fall for it. He had studied the simulation patterns of his opponents, and he knew how Admiral Xar thought. The alien Admiral, despite his brilliance, was predictable in his own way. He relied too much on his own reputation, on the fear he inspired in others. Alex, however, was not afraid. He saw the weakness in Xar's plan. The Admiral was trying to bait him, to get him to make an impulsive move. But Alex knew better. He took a deep breath and looked at the simulation screen before him. There was no rush. Xar was making the mistake of underestimating him again. Instead of charging headfirst into the open, as Xar had expected, Alex ordered his fleet to hold position. He shifted his ships into a defensive formation, positioning them in such a way that they could attack from multiple angles. It wasn't the most aggressive move, but it was exactly what Xar didn't expect. Alex was playing the long game now, using patience and careful calculation to set up his next move. As Xar's ships inched forward, slowly closing in, Alex saw his opportunity. He waited for the perfect moment. With precise timing, Alex launched a quick but devastating counterattack. His fleet surged forward from all sides, striking Xar's ships with a series of well-coordinated moves. It was like a carefully orchestrated dance, each ship moving with pinpoint accuracy, each attack designed to exploit a weakness in the alien fleet. Xar's formation, which had once seemed so secure, began to crumble. The alien ships, which had once been so confident in their superiority, were now caught off guard. Alex had turned Xar's patience against him. Xar's eyes widened in disbelief. How had Alex known to wait? How had he predicted the exact moment to strike? The Admiral's mind raced, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. He had expected Alex to be reckless, to be impulsive, but the human boy was anything but. Instead, Alex had used the delay in Xar's movements to his advantage, calculating the best moment to strike and using it to maximum effect. The alien Admiral's anger began to rise. He was no longer fighting just for victory. He was fighting for his own pride. For years, he had been the best, the one everyone feared. And now, here was a human boy, using nothing but his mind, outsmarting him at every turn. Xar's frustration boiled over, and he decided to use his most dangerous weapon. the Cerberus, a weapon that had been designed to crush the most brilliant of minds. It was a deadly, mind-manipulating attack, one that could disrupt the neural systems of his enemies and leave them paralyzed with doubt and confusion. Tsar activated the Cerberus, a weapon unlike any other in the galaxy. It was a mental assault that targeted the mind, interfering with thoughts, slowing reaction times, and causing hallucinations. The alien Admiral knew that if Alex could be affected by the Cerberus, he would make a mistake. His mind would become clouded, his decision-making slowed, and that would be the end of him. As the Cerberus weapon began to activate, Tsar watched closely. He expected to see Alex falter, to see the human boy crumble under the pressure. But instead, something incredible happened. Alex felt the pressure on his mind, the sudden wave of confusion that tried to invade his thoughts. The Cerberus was a powerful tool, but Alex had one advantage. He had trained his mind for years. He had played countless strategy games, read every book on tactics, and studied the mental tricks of the galaxy's greatest minds. He had prepared for this moment, even if he hadn't known it at the time. With a deep breath, Alex focused his mind, pushing through the fog of confusion. The Cerberus may have been powerful, but it was no match for Alex's will. He fought back against the mental assault, using every ounce of his concentration to block out the distractions. Slowly, his mind cleared. He felt the pressure lift. The Cerberus had failed. Alex, despite the alien weapon's best efforts, remained focused. And that's when Tsar realized the depth of his mistake. Alex wasn't just playing the game with his fleet. He was playing the game with his mind. And that was something the Admiral hadn't accounted for. Alex's mental fortitude, his ability to resist Tsar's tactics, had just leveled the playing field. Tsar's eyes flashed with realization. He had underestimated the human boy in ways he couldn't even begin to understand. The tables were turning. Alex was no longer the underdog. He had become the predator, and Tsar was the prey. The alien Admiral's fleet, which had been once so carefully positioned, began to break apart. Alex's ships, freed from the influence of the Cerberus, surged forward with renewed vigor. They attacked from every direction, overwhelming Tsar's forces. The alien Admiral tried to adjust, but it was too late. Alex's brilliant tactics had sealed his fate. The battle that had once seemed like a one-sided affair had turned into a desperate struggle for Tsar's fleet. And the Admiral knew, deep down, that this time, it wasn't going to be him who came out on top. The battlefield was chaotic, with explosions lighting up the dark expanse of space as Alex's fleet closed in on the remnants of Admiral Tsar's forces. The alien ships, once proud and powerful, were now falling apart, each attack from Alex's fleet striking with the precision of a well-aimed arrow. The tables had completely turned, and it seemed as though victory was within Alex's grasp. The young human, who had been dismissed as a mere boy at the start of the tournament, had outsmarted one of the greatest tacticians in the galaxy. He had broken through Tsar's defenses, exposed his weaknesses, and shown the universe that humans were not to be underestimated. Tsar, sitting at his command post, felt his heart race with a mixture of disbelief and rage. He had never been defeated like this before. His mind had always been his greatest weapon. And now, for the first time, he was losing to someone who didn't rely on power, size, or speed. Alex had defeated him with something more intangible, more elusive: strategy, wit, and sheer persistence. The Admiral's 4 eyes narrowed as he scanned the battlefield. His fleet was disintegrating under the onslaught of Alex's attacks, and no matter how hard he tried to adjust, the human boy's tactics kept outmaneuvering him. His reputation, the one that had been built on countless victories, was slipping away. Tsar clenched his fists, his mind racing. He couldn't let this happen. He couldn't lose to a human. He'd fought too hard to get to this point, and the thought of being humiliated before the entire galaxy was unbearable. He had to think of something, anything, that would turn the tide in his favor. He glanced at the simulation screen, and his eyes flickered to a hidden option, one that had been designed as a last resort. It was a desperate move, one that would risk everything. But at this point, he had nothing left to lose. Xar activated the Abyss Protocol, a catastrophic weapon that had the power to wipe out everything in the simulation. His fleet, Alex's fleet, and the entire battlefield. It was a gamble, but it was his only hope. The activation of the Abyss Protocol sent a ripple through the simulation. Suddenly, the entire battlefield began to warp and distort, as if reality itself was being bent. The stars flickered out, and the space surrounding the fleets turned black, as if a vast, empty void had opened up in the middle of the battle. The alien ships, caught in the energy surge of the Abyss Protocol, slowed to a crawl. Alex's fleet, too, was affected, though it wasn't completely disabled. A sudden wave of distortion pulsed through the human ships, throwing them off balance and scrambling their systems. Alex blinked as the simulation's reality seemed to twist around him. His screen flickered as the once stable environment began to warp, the familiar shapes of asteroids and ships turning into abstract, shifting blobs. His first thought was that it was some kind of glitch, but then he saw the Abyss Protocol flashing on his display. He knew what it was. Xar's last-ditch weapon, a way to reset the simulation and erase everything. Alex's heart pounded in his chest. The alien Admiral had resorted to this kind of extreme measure to ensure his victory. It was a cheat, a desperation move, and it threatened everything Alex had worked for. The rules of the game had just changed, and it felt like everything was on the line. But Alex wasn't about to give up. He had been fighting for too long, using his mind to outthink his opponent at every turn. He wasn't going to let Xar win this way. He quickly assessed the situation. The Abyss Protocol had thrown both fleets into disarray, but it hadn't completely destroyed the simulation. If he could regain control of his ships and adapt to the new environment, he might still have a chance. With a deep breath, Alex focused on his fleet. He ordered his ships to engage their backup systems, rerouting power to their shields and weapons, while also initiating a sequence to stabilize the battlefield. It was a long shot, but Alex had learned to improvise under pressure. As the simulation's environment continued to shift, he used his fleet's agility to his advantage, quickly maneuvering them through the distorted space. His ships bounced around, avoiding the instability created by the Abyss Protocol, while also managing to keep their firepower intact. Xar, watching the chaos unfold, felt a twinge of doubt. The Abyss Protocol was supposed to be the final solution, a surefire way to crush his opponent. But Alex was still holding his ground. Despite the odds, despite the strange and shifting battlefield, the human fleet was refusing to break. Xar had underestimated him once again. He had thought that by using his ultimate weapon, he could break Alex's spirit and force him into submission. But the human boy was adapting faster than Xar had ever expected. For a brief moment, Xar considered disengaging, admitting defeat. But then his pride took over. He couldn't let it end like this. He had to win, no matter the cost. His eyes burned with fury as he adjusted his fleet's positioning, attempting to compensate for the instability caused by the Abyss Protocol. He knew that his fleet was faltering, but he was willing to fight until the very end. Alex, sensing the Admiral's frustration, knew this was his moment. The Abyss Protocol had forced both sides into a chaotic struggle, but now, Xar was making a critical mistake. He was allowing his emotions to cloud his judgment. Alex had learned to think clearly under pressure, and now he would use that skill to outmaneuver Xar once and for all. He ordered his fleet to break formation and attack with a new, unexpected strategy. It wasn't just about power anymore. It was about precision, timing, and keeping Xar off balance. As Alex's ships surged forward, they struck at the heart of Xar's fleet, exploiting the weaknesses that had appeared during the chaos of the Abyss Protocol. The alien Admiral's ships were slower now, less coordinated, their once formidable defenses faltering under Alex's relentless assault. The human boy had seen the cracks in Xar's tactics, and now he was driving the final wedge between the alien Admiral and victory. One by one, Tsar's ships fell, until only a handful remained, struggling to keep up with the lightning-fast maneuvers of Alex's fleet. Tsar's mind raced as his last fleet units were overwhelmed. It was no use. Alex had done the impossible. The human boy had outsmarted him, had adapted to the shifting chaos of the battlefield in ways Tsar never could have predicted. With a heavy heart, Tsar realized that the game was over. He had been defeated, not by strength, not by firepower, but by strategy, by intelligence, by the very thing that had made him so formidable in the first place. The simulation screen flickered one final time, and then the battlefield went silent. The chaotic distortions of space cleared, and Alex's fleet emerged victorious. The alien Admiral's ships, once so dominant, were now floating in space, nothing more than debris. The arena, once filled with hushed whispers of disbelief, erupted in astonished silence. The impossible had happened. A human, a mere boy, had outsmarted Admiral Tsar and claimed victory. The galaxy watched in stunned awe as the impossible became reality. And one thing was clear: humanity had just proven it was a force to be reckoned with. The silence in the arena was deafening. The once boasting alien crowd, whose whispers had echoed with disbelief and skepticism throughout the battle, now stood in complete awe. The Admiral's fleet, which had been so powerful and feared, was nothing more than wreckage floating in space. Alex's fleet, still intact and poised for further action, was the undeniable victor. The young human, who had been seen as an underdog at the start of the match, had now accomplished what many thought impossible. He had outsmarted Admiral Tsar, one of the greatest tacticians in the galaxy. The alien Admiral sat in his command seat, his face pale, his mind racing as he watched his fleet crumble in real time. His four eyes, once filled with confidence and arrogance, now seemed hollow, reflecting nothing but defeat. He had used every trick in the book, every weapon at his disposal, and yet he had been undone by a human boy. The bitter taste of failure was one he had never known, at least not like this. Tsar's hands clenched into fists as he looked around at the destruction, the remains of what had once been his pride and joy. His mind flashed back to the moment he had first encountered Alex, dismissing him as a mere child. How foolish he had been. Alex, on the other hand, was calm. He was sitting back in his command chair, his hands relaxed, his mind still sharp from the intense mental battle. He had expected this moment to feel different, to feel like the culmination of all his effort, but instead, it felt almost surreal. Victory was his, and yet it seemed almost too easy. The game had been won, but there was something else lingering in the air, something deeper than the victory itself. It was a sense of validation, a sense that the galaxy had just learned an important lesson. Humanity was more than what others had thought. The arena, now silent, began to stir. The spectators, who had once looked down on Alex with disdain, now found themselves looking at him with a new kind of respect. The alien species in the stands, who had once believed themselves to be superior in every way, were now beginning to understand the true power of the human mind. A murmur rippled through the crowd as they processed what had just happened. The impossible had been made real, and Alex had done it by relying on his intelligence, his ability to think outside the box, and his refusal to back down. He had proven that humans were capable of outthinking even the most experienced beings in the galaxy. The announcer's voice boomed over the loudspeakers, breaking the silence. And the winner is Alex, the human strategist, who has just defeated Admiral Tsar of the Zethorian Empire. The unthinkable has happened. The crowd's shock slowly began to turn into a slow, hesitant applause. Some cheered, some still stood in stunned silence, but no one could deny the magnitude of what they had just witnessed. The tide had shifted. The perception of humanity, especially in this part of the galaxy, had changed forever. On the other side of the arena, Alex's team was celebrating. They had been with him from the start, and they had watched in awe as their leader turned the tide of the battle. The human boy who had once been an outsider had now earned the respect of every alien in the galaxy. He had done more than win a game. He had shown that humanity was capable of feats no one had ever thought possible. As Alex stood, his crew gathered around him, offering congratulations. His eyes met theirs, and for the first time, he allowed himself a small smile. They had done it. He had done it. And they had all made history together. But even as the applause continued, Alex's mind wandered. He knew that this victory was just the beginning. The galaxy had just witnessed a shift in power, and it wasn't going to stop here. There would be more challenges ahead, more opportunities for humanity to prove its worth, to show the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. But for now, Alex allowed himself to savor the moment. He had faced down the impossible and come out victorious. The universe, it seemed, was finally starting to realize that humans were not just survivors. They were contenders. Back in the control room, Sar's hands trembled as he watched the aftermath of his defeat. His mind raced through every decision he had made, every move he had taken. He knew that this loss would haunt him for the rest of his life. No one had ever bested him before. He had always been the one to outthink his enemies, to crush them beneath his superior tactics. And yet here he was, facing a human, a species he had once considered beneath him, and he had been bested. His pride was shattered, and he knew that his reputation would never be the same again. But Sar was not a fool. He knew the importance of the moment. He could not afford to let this defeat define him. He would retreat, regroup, and find a way to come back stronger. For now, though, he had to face the reality. He had been outsmarted. The galaxy would talk about this for ages. The fall of Admiral Sar, at the hands of a human, would go down in history as one of the greatest upsets of all time. As the last of the alien ships drifted away from the battlefield, Alex took a deep breath. His victory had sent ripples across the galaxy, but he knew that it was just the beginning of something far larger. There were other challenges ahead, other battles to be fought. But now, humanity had a voice in the galactic arena. They had proven their worth, and Alex had been the one to make it happen. He turned to his crew, his team, and gave them a nod. "We've made history," he said simply, his voice calm but full of purpose. "Now let's make sure they never forget us." The crew cheered in response, knowing that they had just been a part of something monumental. Together, they had done the impossible. They had shown the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. As they left the arena, the first steps of a new era had already begun. The galaxy was watching, and humanity had just earned a seat at the table.